Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Breaking Points. Krystal, I'm in for Sagar. Thanks for having me.
Always. Happy New Year, Emily.
Happy New Year.
Got off to a terrible but eventful start to 2025. We had two violent incidents that the FBI is investigating. They're actually looking to see if there might be any link between the two. So far, indications are no, but we'll break all of that down for you both in New Orleans and also in Las Vegas. Trump did weigh in publicly on New Year's Eve about the whole Elon Musk H-1B thing, firmly siding with Elon Musk and indicating that actually we need a lot more immigrants in the country. So a little bit different note that he's sounding now versus when he was on the campaign trail and certainly when he was on the trail back in 2016 and 2020. We also have some drama in the Republican caucus. Mike Johnson faces a speaker vote tomorrow. And he can only, because the House Republican caucus has such a narrow majority, he can only lose one vote. He's already lost that vote. Thomas Massie has said he's not voting for Mike Johnson. So if anyone else defects, he won't be able to get a majority. We'll be in another negotiation a la Kevin McCarthy, Matt Gaetz, et cetera. So we'll see where all of that goes. They're also facing hitting the debt ceiling very, very shortly. We're going to take a look. Emily's going to help me understand this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni thing. He's firing back both at Blake Lively and at the New York Times, suing the New York Times, claiming that their reporting was false and that they were cherry picking and actually altering communications that they used for their blockbuster report, alleging that he had harassed her and also that he had retaliated against her. So we'll break all of that down for you. The parents of the OpenAI whistleblower who was found dead, authorities deem that a suicide. The parents don't buy it. They have hired a private investigator to look into exactly what happened there. So we'll bring you those details. And we also are going to have an American doctor from Texas join us who is just back from his second trip to Gaza. Obviously, we covered earlier this week the horrific latest raid on Kamal Adwan Hospital, the last functioning hospital in northern Gaza has been destroyed. All of the patients and medical staff forced to leave, some of them detained, et cetera. So he's going to tell us what he saw when he was in the Gaza Strip. Before we jump into the latest that we know out of New Orleans and this horrific terror attack that occurred on New Year's Day, if you guys could help us out, help bring in the new year, help us be able to provide the best coverage we can by becoming premium subscribers, you can go to breakingpoints.com. If you can't do that, that's fine. It also helps us out a lot to like and share our videos on YouTube. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the news.
Yes. Let's start in New Orleans, Krystal, where the death toll has now risen to 15 people from the horrific New Year's attack on Bourbon Street. Now, you've all in the audience likely heard the basics of what happened. Obviously, a car, we have some video of this we're going to show in just one moment, rammed into the packed crowd on Bourbon Street in New Orleans around 3 in the morning on New Year's Eve, but then really New Year's Day. People were still out in full force celebrating New Year's Eve. So it's clear that this attacker wanted to take out as many people as possible. Now, President Joe Biden, late yesterday, finally addressed the nation in some very, Krystal, I would say some very strange, there was nothing strange really about the script, but certainly about the delivery. So let me go ahead right now and roll this video of Joe Biden addressing the nation from Camp David, which is where he was for the holiday. I'm going to get this in full screen so you can actually see his face up close. Here's Joe Biden from Camp David last night.
Our hearts are with the people of New Orleans after the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours. To all the families of those who were killed, to all those who are injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come. I want to thank our brave first responders and law enforcement personnel who stopped the attacker in his tracks before he could kill or injure even more people. And I want to thank you to everyone at the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, including the FBI, for working nonstop to investigate this heinous act. The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, and whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill, The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. The situation is very fluid, and the investigation has a preliminary stage. And the fact is that right now, there you go. The law enforcement and intelligence community are continuing to look for any connections, associations, or co-conspirators.
Well, Krystal, I feel better.
I mean, this is the least important part of this at this point, given the loss of life and et cetera. But it's unbelievable this man is our president and that he still believes that he would have been able to beat Donald Trump. But, clearly this was a horrific, intentional attack. We are learning more about the suspect who was killed after, he fired at law enforcement and law enforcement fired back and shot and killed him. But, the ISIS piece, so an ISIS flag was found in his truck, and the president there indicates that according to law enforcement, he had posted some video sympathizing with ISIS. The more we learn about this dude, the more it looks less like an instance of some sort of Islamic radicalization and more like a dude who went through a divorce and lost his mind, because apparently he had first threatened his own family and was thinking of killing them, and then got this ISIS inspiration idea instead, and goes and murders a bunch of, innocent partygoers on celebrating the new year. So we can go ahead. Emily, I think you've got the TikTok video of this individual, born and raised in Texas, originally Christian, converted to Islam in the last number of years. According to his relatives and friends, had become sort of increasingly devout and increasingly withdrawn. He'd gone through 2 divorces and had a very troubled relationship, in particular with, I think, the second wife, it appears like. But this is a video of him. He was a professional. He worked at Deloitte, actually. And this is a video of him when he was going through a phase where he was trying to launch a real estate business. And this, in any case, is how he presented himself in the context of that business.
Sadeem Jabbar, property manager with Blue Meadow Properties and team lead at the Midas Group at Core Realty. I just want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch. So I've taken those skills and applied them to my career as a real estate agent, where I feel like what really sets me apart from other agents is my ability to be able to, one, be a fierce negotiator. So not only do I brilliantly market your property to make sure it gets sold as quickly as possible or gets leased as quickly as possible, but I'm also going to take every ounce of energy and putting it into negotiating for you and for your property to get the best deal that you can possibly get for it. So once we get to the closing table, all the I's are going to be dotted, all the T's are going to be crossed, everything's going to go off without a hitch. And that is my word that I'm giving to you as your real estate agent.
And Krystal, what I'm sharing right here is from the New York Times. They say they reported midday yesterday, a man who knew Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar tells us that Jabbar had converted to Islam and then began acting erratically in recent months. This is according to Mike Baker. The concerning behavior led to him having limited contact with his children. So certainly more reporting to that extent is coming in, no question about it. We're going to learn more. I just have to say, as the law enforcement response, Krystal, transpired yesterday in the public eye, started with a news conference in which the FBI said that they were not investigating an act of terrorism. We're going to get into some of this in just one moment. And then obviously they had covered up the ISIS flag, which is going to lead to a lot of questions for years to come, certainly. But then hours later, actually like moments later, pivoted to saying, yes, they were investigating this as an act of terrorism, which, I mean, it all seemed to be adding up pretty quickly to the point where they should be able to confirm that. They then held a disastrous midday press conference yesterday. And it wasn't just law enforcement. It was also Jeff Landry, the governor of Louisiana, Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, involved in this press conference. That
was honestly just bizarre.
It was
like
bizarre.
Weirdly combative and for no reason at all. It was just weird.
Yeah, it was horrible. I honestly thought it was just a disgraceful display. They were combative with reporters. Kennedy told a boomer joke about like NBC being on the left and the right in the middle of this press conference.
Right. It's
bodies were still in the street.
Really not the time when 15 people are dead and many dozens more injured and you're making like partisan weird boomer jokes.
Right. Bodies were literally still on Bourbon Street at the time, which was another thing that they were confirming in that press conference. It was horrific. They did not want to answer questions. They all seemed to be on completely different pages. They tried to end the press conference after delaying it for forever. They tried to end it like quickly into the questions, a few questions in, because they were threatening reporters, essentially saying, like, you're not asking questions that we can answer, so we're just going to end it. I mean, it was outrageous how that happened. So let's take a look at some of the questions they were answering. One of the biggest questions that they've faced going into all of this is, how did this happen? Was there not adequate security? New Orleans obviously was hosting the Sugar Bowl. There were tens of thousands of people in town for the Sugar Bowl. It was supposed to be yesterday night on New Year's Eve. They postponed it a day. That was an announcement from the press conference we were just mentioning. But they're also hosting the Super Bowl and just plainly should be able to keep, obviously, people safe on Bourbon Street now on a New Year's celebration. Now, this is video, and it has some yellow boxes that you can follow of the car, which was rented on the app Turo. It was an electric vehicle. Let's go ahead and follow those yellow boxes if you're watching this.
Terrifying.
So what we just saw there was the electric vehicle go around a squad car that we're now learning from authorities was there because they're working to get barricades, basically the types of barricades that you put up when you don't want traffic to come down a street and ram a street full of people. This is what they're saying as of right now. They were using squad cars instead, but obviously you can drive around a squad car. And if you can get onto the sidewalk, then you haven't fully barricaded the street, Krystal. Their answers to this have been utterly unsatisfying thus far.
Yeah, and apparently all they had up were just the little like orange gate barricades that you can easily barrel through. To your point, it seems like the most obvious thing in the world that if you're trying to block a street using a vehicle, which is a common practice, you know, I've seen this in New York or I've seen this in DC where they're moving even some of the like, you know, sanitation trucks to try to block off different areas. Like, you have to actually block off that area or else it doesn't serve much of a purpose. Also, the fact that he's able to just skirt right around it and there's not any, you know, immediate reaction. Now, I have seen video of local law enforcement, you know, immediately running into danger when they realized what was happening. And obviously they were able to neutralize the threat before it was cause even more loss of life. We should also mention in terms of the details here, and part of what created this confusion around whether or not he was acting alone, confusion which I don't think has been completely resolved, although at this point it appears that, the cat just showed up, that he was acting completely alone. But there was an IED in addition to the firearms that he had in the truck. And then there was some indication that there might have been some other IED that was found around the city. So, you know, there are some questions that still remain, but that, you know, that's part of what's been confusing is initially they came out and said, oh, we're investigating these other individuals that we saw planting these devices around the city, and then had to come out and walk that. No, actually turns out they weren't involved. So there was a lot of questions about the law enforcement response here. And we actually have a video of someone who was there, an eyewitness, who said that he was concerned from the jump about the seeming lack of security of this area that is, obviously famous in terms of America. It's this cultural, historical destination known for its, revelry. Obviously, it's going to be a hotspot on New Year's Eve. And the fact that security was so lax in and of itself raises massive questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at that video, which is queued up right here. This is on CNN. We can go ahead and roll the clip.
Last Mardi Gras, this happened to an extent, maybe not terrorism, but still people getting hit in mass population with vehicles. Those barricades were not up, period. They had the flimsy orange ones that you could just push over with your finger. We actually thought it was kind of odd because usually when you get to Bourbon Street, you can turn your back to Canal and not worry about anything. You can just walk the street, especially on New Year's, and there were still vehicles coming after 8 p.m. And then, the fact that they never raised them, that's how this guy was able to get down Bourbon Street so quickly and cause so much damage. Because there's other barricades past the Canal and Bourbon intersection. There's more like every 2-3 blocks. So what was 10 or 15 dead and 30 wounded could have only been maybe 5 and 15. Who can say, but it definitely would have been minimalized because this truck could not go around those barricades. Everything in New Orleans in the French Quarter has a balcony. All the balconies have poles, several steel posts, and there's no going around anything. If that barricade's up, that's a wrap. That's your end.
So just to be clear, you're saying that they were just the flimsy orange barricades that weren't up, that yes, they weren't the same barricades there as elsewhere.
No, the metal ones were absolutely not engaged.
Wow, and that struck you at the time, right? Because there was that 2017 incident with Mardi Gras where a drunk driver drove through. And so from what my understanding is, they increased security measures in that area because of what happened there. But what you're saying is that you didn't see the security that should have been there to protect the revelers.
Yeah, we were walking right across it. Like as you walk down Bourbon, you cross like 5 of them. And then even when you turn off the side streets of Bourbon, there's more. Like the precautions are there and everything's implicated. You just have to use it.
Mm. Now, just for a flavor of how the FBI's response changed over the course of the day, the Associated Press confirmed investigators have reviewed video of 3 men and a woman placing explosives in connection with the deadly car attack in New Orleans French Quarter. The FBI does not believe the driver acted alone. So now there are 3 other suspects. This is in the middle of the day yesterday. There are 3 other suspects that are potentially being investigated as part of a terrorism cell and are loose, ostensibly, in the country. And the FBI then walks that back later in the day. So let's take a look at this report from CNN.
Getting new information. You're getting some clarification from law enforcement officials. What are you learning?
Yeah, well, for one of the things we have been focused on is the FBI certainly was looking at this surveillance video that at the time at least appeared to show that there were other people who may have been involved in placing devices in the French Quarter. Now we know that law enforcement now has determined that those people had nothing to do with this incident. At this point, it appears that those people seen on surveillance video did not have anything to do with placing devices in the French Quarter, that this suspect was solely responsible, certainly for the attack, at least as we know it at this point. Now, we should make clear that the FBI is still looking at possible associates. They're trying to see whether there's anybody who may have been involved in helping to create the devices, the IEDs, whether those people, anybody who might have been involved in helping to plan the attack. But at this point, at least for on the part of the surveillance video, they now believe that those people had absolutely nothing to do with this actual attack that happened this morning, Wolf.
All right, important information indeed.
So, Krystal, it also appeared that reporters, like press, actually got to the suspect's house in Houston before the FBI. That's so
really?
far. We have New York Post saying they were there before the FBI was there, before law enforcement was there. And just to go back briefly to the moment at the disastrous, insane press conference in the middle of the day yesterday, when John Kennedy made his like weird little joke, what he also did was basically box the FBI director out to get to the podium and make remarks. And the reason I think that's important is I can imagine if you're in Louisiana and your constituents are still lying on the ground on Bourbon Street, you are probably enormously frustrated with the FBI, who came out right away for some reason, said we weren't investigating it as terrorism, then flipped immediately on it. They later in the day would do the same thing. Like, there's a level of incompetence that he may have been reacting there. Now, we have no idea why he actually boxed out the FBI director, but it was a horrible day for the FBI yesterday. There's just absolutely no question about it. These things are incredibly difficult. Obviously, that's true. There's a fluid situation, thousands of people. There's lots of CCTV footage because it's Bourbon Street. There's lots of mobile phone video, obviously, because it was New Year's Eve. That said, how you get from alerting the country to 3 possible terrorists being on the loose because you're seeing them plant IEDs in CCTV footage, you're confirming that to the press, and then hours later saying, oh no, we don't think that they were planning IEDs. That was a stunning reversal after their other stunning reversal on the terrorism question.
Absolutely. And the first thing that even just as an analyst covering these things, is that the initial stories often change. Initial perception of what happened often changes. You would think the FBI would be the ones to, be most well aware of that. So to be leaking to journalists like, oh, I think it's this larger ISIS terror cell, based on, a video that then they immediately go out and find, oh no, they were just, party goers, doing whatever they were doing. It's truly outrageous. And as I said before, I think there are still some questions remaining about whether or not he acted alone. But at least according to NBC News, they said the only indication that law enforcement had that he hadn't been the lone wolf here was that video. So if there is other evidence, they hadn't uncovered it as of yet, that there were other people who were involved in this. The indications, at least at this point, are that, he lost his mind for whatever reason, decided to do let me grab my ISIS flag and do some, horrific attack on innocent people, and perpetrated this, came up with this on his own, is what the indication is at this point. The other thing, and this will help us transition into the other violent event yesterday on New Year's Day. So there were a few things that surface level seemed to sort of connect this attack with the this Vegas attack. So you have someone who drove up in a Cybertruck. Tesla, of course, manufacturer owned by Elon Musk, manufacturer of the Cybertruck, outside of the Trump Hotel, and then detonates a bunch of explosives there, killing himself and injuring, I think, something like 7 people who were nearby. So both vehicles were electric, used in both attacks. Both attacks used vehicles, both rented from this same, it's like a peer-to-peer rental car agency where it's you can personally say, hey, my car is available for you to rent. That's what this app effectively was. And then the other thing is they both are apparently former military. Now, it doesn't appear thus far that there are actually any links. These seem to be coincidences, but in any case, that's being investigated at this point. The fact that there were weirdly some surface level similarities between these two disparate attacks.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as this was playing out yesterday, it was obviously you had the FBI saying there may have been multiple people involved, and then we start learning more about the Cybertruck explosion outside of Trump Tower in Las Vegas, and it starts to look incredibly frightening, immediately frightening, because it seems that there's a chain reaction happening around the country potentially. And to your point, Krystal, we're going to learn a lot more about what radicalized this suspect, and that's an interesting and unanswered question right now, is basically what the hell happened. This is somebody who was in the military, as you heard President Biden say just a few moments ago when we played the video from his Camp David press conference, somebody who was in the Army Reserves until not that long ago, seemingly normal person who was
working
American,
for Deloitte, holding
born
down this
here,
normal white collar job.
I believe the suspect's parents were also born here, not connected, unless there are other suspects that we learn of, but not connected to any type of immigration. That was another thing that was playing out yesterday. The car itself had gone through Eagle Pass, Texas, multiple times. That he had rented on Turo, the app, to your point. So there's so much more to the story that we still don't know. But I do know one thing. A lot of people are not at this moment feeling probably very confident in what the FBI says as things transpire. Now, some breaking news, the FBI is set to brief Congress on Thursday. So there should be, Congress is back in town, the new Congress is in session. We're actually going to talk about how difficult that will be for Republicans in just a bit, because as they seek to turn the screws on the FBI and to get a new FBI director confirmed, in the Senate, at least, over on the House side, Mike Johnson has like a one vote margin. So a lot to come later this week and a lot of questions that remain unanswered.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.